Welcome to your practice for today. This is a practice that I've called Arrival and Warm Up, and you might like to do this as a practice all on its own. It lasts about 25 minutes, or maybe you feel like pairing this with some of the other short videos that I'm creating so that you can pick and mix your way into whatever kind of practice you feel like having today. I hope you find this video helpful. We'll begin today by coming down to the floor. So you might like to make your way onto your back. And you're welcome to begin your practice with your legs bent and your feet on the floor if you find that a helpful way of starting. However, if you feel like extending your legs into Shavasana, you're welcome to begin your practice in that position. You can choose. And taking a moment to adjust yourself so that you can be fairly comfortable and still in the shape that you've chosen. You're welcome to have your eyes open or closed. And then for a moment, perhaps beginning to notice your breath. Noticing how your breath flows in and out without any effort or need to change it in any way at all. Where do you notice your body moving as you breathe? What temperature does your breath feel like as it flows in and out? And then can you begin to take your attention toward the back of your body, perhaps starting with the back of your head, noticing how the back of your head feels resting on the floor. And maybe you even make a few very small little micro movements, so small they're almost invisible, just to help you sensitize and locate the feeling of the back of your head on the floor just as it is. And then moving to the back of your shoulders and your upper back. Noticing any parts of your arms that are in contact with the surface beneath you. Continuing down and along the back of your body, noticing all the places where you touch the floor and perhaps places where you don't. And then as you breathe out, perhaps you might imagine or welcome a feeling of widening and deepening and dropping more towards your back body and from your back body into the floor and from the floor into the earth. And letting your whole body land here and turning your attention to your body, to feelings of heaviness, widening, deepening, and letting go as you prepare for your practice today. When you're ready, if your legs are not already bent, you may like to just step your feet to the floor and bend your knees. And then perhaps you might step your feet a bit wider than your hips. And you might like to begin to let your knees drop towards one side and perhaps slowly turning your head towards the opposite direction. And maybe beginning to move back and forth from side to side. can you practice this in a really slow way so that you're able to sense and feel all the different shifts and movements in your body? Maybe the way that your feet peel away from the floor as your knees tip to one side, the way the back of your pelvis shifts on the floor, the back of your head, and any other parts of your body that you notice movement or shifting or sensation in as you're practicing. And you can really choose how big or how small this movement is. Perhaps today you're working with a very gentle practice, or maybe you're injured or recovering from illness, so perhaps your movements are very, very small. Often very small, slow, mindful movement can be a beautiful practice. Or perhaps you're feeling as though you really want to get your body moving today and you're feeling well and perhaps a good level of energy, so you might move a lot bigger in your side-to-side twisting shape. Really feeling free to choose and tailor your practice so that it suits you, meets you and serves you where you are today. Let's find our way back to center. From center, you may like to just step your feet a little closer together again, maybe about hip distance apart. So you can find this distance by locating the inside of your hips here, these bony bits just down in your pelvis. And if you imagine as though you're lining your kneecaps up with those bony places, and then your feet or your middle toes are lined up with that as well. You probably can't see your toes, but you can imagine. And then from here, let's begin to tuck our tail under and press our lower back down into the floor. And then allow your lower back to return to neutral. And let's just do a few more of those, tucking your tail under, curving through or rounding through your lower back. And then returning back to neutral, and possibly if it feels good for your body, you might roll the other way, create a little bit of an arch through your lower spine or an increased arch through your lower spine as well. Let's take a few more of these. Gently beginning to mobilize the lower part of your spine and your pelvis. You can stay with this, or the next time you tuck your tail, you might begin to push into your feet and continue to peel your spine away from the floor, perhaps lifting your hips up towards the ceiling. When you arrive, maintain your knees in parallel, so if your knees have splayed apart, can you activate your inner leg muscles and draw your legs back to parallel? And then when you're ready, you could continue to keep your tail tucked and begin to lower your spine back down to the floor, vertebrae by vertebrae, until you arrive back in neutral, and maybe you roll the other way into a little bit of an arch. So you're welcome to continue moving with the beginning practice, just the tail tuck and the gentle spinal arch, or maybe you're rolling all the way up into our easy bridge pose. You can choose. If you are lifting up off the floor, it's absolutely fine to squeeze your buttocks and to activate the muscles of your legs, to tuck your tail, to activate your pelvic floor muscles, so that you start to wake up through your core, wake up through your legs, inviting your body to begin to create some heat through the activation of your muscles. So you might continue for a few more rounds of lifting and lowering, or maybe you're with the first variation. Or a final option could be to lift up and then perhaps to hold here. So once again, checking that your knees are still parallel, keeping your tail tucked under at this point so you can still see your knees if you gaze forward. Maybe you feel like interlocking your hands underneath, and then you might roll to one side, tucking your upper arm under, and then roll to the other side, tucking your other upper arm under. And then if it feels okay, you might even lift a little higher through your hips, maybe coming up into an arch for your spine. Making sure that this feels okay on your neck and on your shoulders, keeping your gaze straight up toward the ceiling if you can, rather than turning your head. inner thighs nice and active, pressing your chest forward. And when you're ready, releasing and rolling nice and gently all the way back down towards the floor. Let's all bring one knee into your chest. Give your knee a little hug, and then you can bring your other knee in as well and give your knees a hug. And you might like to rock a little from side to side, or maybe you circle your legs around here. Just taking a nice easy release for your lower spine. If you're circling, you might change directions. And then let's place one foot back down on the floor. You can keep your other knee in towards your chest, and you might like to take your hands around your shin and just give your knee a squeeze in towards you. And then you can extend your leg up towards the ceiling, beginning to straighten the back of your leg, and it may or may not straighten all the way, it doesn't matter too much. Let's draw our knee into our chest. Inhale as your knee squeezes in, and exhaling as you extend your leg up towards the sky, perhaps inviting a bit of a stretch for the back of your hamstring. Let's keep moving back and forth with this, breathing in if it feels okay for you as you hug your knee, and breathing out as you extend your leg. So you can continue with the movement if the movement is feeling as though it's offering you some good nourishment and a really great way to begin your practice. Or if you feel like extending your leg up and pausing there, you might like to work with a bit of hamstring lengthening. So maybe it helps to rub the back of your leg, or squeeze or massage your leg. And perhaps your calf muscle as well if you can reach it. It's okay if your leg is bent, but maybe encouraging your leg to be as straight as you can, where you feel a hamstring stretch that you can hold. So it's not so intense that your leg is shaking a lot and you're really struggling to hold the shape. And then let's point through our toes and ankle on the side and draw your toes back towards your nose. And let's do a few more of those. And can you link your breath to this movement? So maybe taking a breath in as you draw your toes back to your nose, and maybe breathing out as you point through your ankle and your toes. If it works the other way for you, it's absolutely fine. The aim really is just to create that sense of slowing your breath down and linking your breath and your movement together. And then when you're ready, you can bring your foot back down to the floor, and let's float our other knee into our chest. Again, you can anchor your hands around your shin, giving your leg a nice squeeze in. And then when you're ready, reaching your leg up towards the ceiling, perhaps noticing a sense of stretch or lengthening in the back of your leg. Let's keep moving, and maybe you choose to breathe in as you hug your knee, and maybe you choose to breathe out as you extend your leg. Please remember that it's fine if you're not doing exactly as I suggest. It might work another way for you. Whatever you're choosing, can you let your whole breath, the whole length of your inhalation, the whole length of your exhalation match the length of your movement? So you're creating a yoga, a union between the two. You might choose to continue moving here between hugging your knee and extending your leg, or perhaps you choose to extend your leg and pause there for a moment. Maybe a massage, a squeeze, or a little bit of a rub for the back of your leg and possibly your calf muscle might be helpful. And then you might begin to point and flex through your ankle and your toes. Again, you can create a yoga between your breath and your movement. When we focus our breath with our movement, our mind tends to come along for the ride. We tend to experience present moment. And sometimes our minds will pop off again and we'll forget that we're breathing and moving together. And when we remember, we come back again, and once again we're back in our present moment experience. And then when you're ready, let's float this foot back down towards the floor, rolling over to your side and coming up to your hands and knees. from your hands and knees, let's begin to work with our cat-cow shape. So you want to have your hands straight under your shoulders and your knees straight underneath your hips. And you might like to take a little bit of a squeeze of your pelvic floor muscles, just a gentle one, 10 or 20% activation. And then when you're ready, as you breathe in, you can tilt your tail up to the ceiling, open your chest between your upper arms and turn your gaze forward, still keeping the back of your neck fairly long, so trying not to collapse the back of your neck. As you exhale, tucking your tail, tucking your chin, gazing down between your knees if your eyes are open, or feeling your way if your eyes are closed. Let's keep moving back and forth between arching and doming our spines. We have 24 vertebrae in our spine, and each one of these bones interrelates to the one above and below it, and in fact to all of the spinal column. So we have the capacity for so much movement in our spines, but we often tend to be quite habitual creatures, and we don't move with all of the possibilities that might be available to us. So you might stay with this, or maybe you begin to try some other movements, or being a little bit curious about how could you move in this shape. And you don't have to stay where you are. Maybe you circle and move your weight backwards and forwards. Maybe you make symmetrical shapes, or maybe you make asymmetrical shapes. It doesn't have to be the same on both sides. Perhaps inviting your sense of curiosity, which is so important for the continuing development and health of our mind and our body. Inviting your sense of curiosity. What feels interesting, or what feels good for you to do here in terms of movement for your spine. And just taking a few more moments with this. Any last little stretches or squirms or wriggles or movements. And then let's find our way back to sitting on our knees. Now, if it's not comfortable for you to sit on your knees, which is really common, then you might like to just stand up on your knees instead. And maybe you feel like placing a blanket underneath just for a little bit of extra cushioning. So from here, let's bring our fingertips to our shoulders and start to make some circles with our elbows. And again, this movement might be small for you, particularly if you are working with some injury or recovering from injury. Or maybe the movement is quite big. Maybe you're making the biggest circles that you can. And there isn't a right or a wrong way to do this. Choosing what feels like the most helpful range of motion, size or speed, that's what I would say the best way or the right way to practice. But it will look different for each person. You can change sides if you like. Change directions if you like. Maybe you can link your breath here. Where does it feel natural for you to breathe in? And where does it feel natural for you to breathe out? Let's take 2 more circles. And then when you're ready, you can release your arms. And from the same kneeling position, you might just like to drop your hips across to one side so that your feet are just curled in the back behind you. If this is not suiting you for any reason, you can just practice this with your legs extended out in front or in a cross-legged position. So from here, reaching your hand across to the same side as your feet and your lower legs, and your other arm can reach up. Draw your tummy button in a little bit, draw your pelvic floor muscles on slightly, and take a little lean across to the same side as your feet. If leaning doesn't feel great, if it creates pressure or stress through your knees or ankles, then you can absolutely get a really nice lengthening through the side of your body just by lifting your arm up and feeling length. Or maybe you're tipping across and encouraging a bit of stretch there. Finding your breath, taking 3 more breaths here. And And then coming back to center, switching sides. Remember, you can always sit cross-legged or with your legs out in front if that feels preferable to you. Reaching one hand across to the same side as your lower legs and feet. Other arm can lift up and overhead. Draw your belly in, squeezing your pelvic floor just a little bit. Maybe you stay here, or perhaps you're beginning to lean across and take a bit of length through the side of your body. If possible, can you keep your top shoulder moving back rather than collapsing it forward, which will probably take the stretch more into your back than into your side body. So we really want to encourage lengthening and opening for the side of your waist and the side of your ribs here on this side. Finding your breath and taking 3 more. And then coming back to center. And lastly, let's find our seated shape. Your legs can be in any position you choose. Maybe they're extended out in front. If cross-legged is comfortable for you, you might go to that. Or maybe you're coming into a butterfly shape, and you can always place some support underneath your buttocks if you like. So you might sit up on something if that helps. And let's take a twist. Crossing one hand across your body, other hand behind, and taking a nice easy twist here. Drawing your back shoulder back and your front shoulder forward. Finding your breath, sitting tall. And then coming back to center, switching sides. Sitting nice and tall before you twist, keeping both of your sitting bones anchored down on the floor. Finding your breath, noticing how does it feel to breathe here with a twist in your torso. And then coming back to center again. So the last shape of our arrival and warm-up sequence today, taking the soles of your feet together. Knees can come out nice and wide. Feel free to sit up on something like a blanket, a bolster, cushion, yoga block. Hands down beside you to lengthen your spine, drawing your chest forward. Maybe this is feeling like a good amount of stretch for you. You might stay here. Or perhaps you begin to take your hands forward to your ankles or to your feet, and maybe you start to gently draw yourself forward. And I really emphasize the word gentle so that you're really listening to your body, noticing the increased sensation as you're tipping forward, and encouraging your spine to stay long. So rather than dropping your head down to your feet, can you keep your head lifted, draw your chest forward, and hinge from your hip creases, right up there where your legs meet your torso. So the stretch localizes itself more into your hips and groin, rather than being about a big back stretch. Let's take 3 more breaths here. And when you're ready, coming up from there. So that concludes our arrival and warm-up practice. And that might be the end of your practice today. Maybe you feel like just lying down on the floor for a few moments and taking Shavasana, having a wee rest. Or perhaps you're now going to move into one of the other pick and mix selections of short yoga practices that I've offered here. Thank you for joining me. Namaste.